The clatter of pans and the aroma of spices filled the expansive industrial kitchen of the London Courtyard, a renowned restaurant in Notting Hill, a bohemian and gastronomic district of London. Raphael Nelson, 37, carefully observed every movement of the staff as he adjusted the chef's hat that completed his disguise. No one there suspected that the man with a 5 o'clock shadow, wearing a simple uniform, was actually the owner of a chain of 3 successful restaurants in the capital city. Raphael had built his culinary empire from scratch, starting with a small food truck in Hyde Park 10 years ago. Now his flagship establishment hosted celebrities and important business figures every night, becoming a benchmark in contemporary British cuisine with northeastern influences, a tribute to his family's origins in the Scottish Highlands. However, something had been disturbing his peace in recent months. Financial reports indicated inconsistencies in inventory. Expensive spirits mysteriously vanished. High-value items like imported olive oils and premium cuts of meat disappeared without explanation, and even cash from the till showed small discrepancies. As an entrepreneur who valued his team and avoided micromanagement, Raphael was reluctant to believe that someone was stealing. After considering various possibilities, he decided to investigate personally. "Everyone, this is Maurice. He'll be covering Claude's holiday for 2 weeks," announced Bianca, the manager, introducing Raphael to the team with his false name. "Welcome to organized chaos," joked James, the executive chef, unaware he was speaking to his own boss. During the first 3 days of observation, Raphael noticed nothing that would justify the losses. The team worked efficiently, the atmosphere was one of mutual respect, and operations flowed without apparent issues. He was almost giving up on the investigation when on a busy Friday he noticed something that caught his attention. One waitress in particular, Juliana Nash, worked in an almost mechanical manner. Unlike the other staff who chatted and joked during breaks, she kept to herself, focused solely on her tasks. Her perpetually tired gaze and deep dark circles under her eyes revealed that something beyond exhaustive work was afflicting her. Raphael vaguely recalled that she had been hired approximately 3 months prior, following a recommendation from another employee. "What do you think of Juliana?" he casually asked James during dinner preparations. "Hard-working girl. Always on time, never complains. A bit to herself, you know. Shy, but customers like her service. She's efficient and discreet." That night, Raphael decided to stay after closing. He informed the cleaning crew that he needed to review some procedures in the pantry and that he would lock everything up when he left. When the last kitchen staff member said goodbye, he strategically hid among the tall shelves of supplies, with a view of the entire prep area. Silence filled the space, interrupted only by the low hum of the refrigerators. 15 minutes passed. Raphael was about to give up when the back door opened silently. It was Juliana, still in her waitress uniform, looking nervously around as if making sure she was alone. Raphael held his breath, imagining he would finally catch the theft in progress. Perhaps she was after expensive wine bottles or taking money from the cash register. Instead, what he witnessed broke his heart. Juliana crept stealthily to the corner where the kitchen bins were kept. Without making a sound, she moved the large containers aside and crouched behind them. With quick movements, she began to examine the trays where leftovers from dishes returned by customers were deposited, food that would be discarded the next day. Raphael watched, paralyzed, as the young woman separated pieces of bread, meat scraps, rice, and vegetables that still looked edible. With evident and desperate hunger, she began to devour those leftovers, quickly filling her mouth as if fearing discovery at any moment. Silent tears streamed down her face as she chewed the cold, mixed food, occasionally closing her eyes as if savoring the most exquisite of dishes. The scene was heartbreaking. This was not a thief. This was someone so hungry they would eat scraps from the rubbish hidden in shame. Raphael felt his stomach churn, not at the sight of the remnants being consumed, but at the cruel reality unfolding before him. In his own restaurant, under his management, there was someone starving, someone who preferred to humiliate herself by eating leftovers rather than asking for help. For a few minutes, he remained motionless, torn between confronting her immediately or preserving the young woman's dignity, allowing her to finish her improvised meal without the embarrassment of being caught. He chose the latter option, feeling a mixture of compassion and shame for his initial suspicion. When Juliana finished, she carefully wiped away any trace of her meal and replaced the bins in their original positions. She washed her hands with soap and water, adjusted her uniform and dried her tears. For a brief moment, she observed her reflection in the polished metal of the kitchen equipment, forcing a smile as if rehearsing the mask of normality she would wear the next day. As soon as she left through the back, Raphael emerged from his hiding place, feeling like an intruder into someone else's misery. With heavy steps, he went up to his office on the mezzanine. There he shed his disguise and opened the human resources system on the computer. He located Juliana Nash's file, 24 years old, originally from Brighton Beach, on the northern coast of Kent, hired exactly 3 months and 5 days ago to work part-time, 25 hours a week, earning minimum wage. Raphael made a quick mental calculation. In an expensive city like London, where the rent for a room in a peripheral area would consume at least 2/3 of that salary, it was simple maths to conclude that, after transport and other basic expenses, absolutely nothing would be left for adequate food. How did I not notice this before? He murmured to himself, watching the lights of the city that never sleeps from the window. The same city that devoured the dreams of so many migrants like Juliana, who came from small towns in search of opportunities. At that moment, Raphael made a decision that would change not only his life and Juliana's, but the culture of his entire company. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would begin to rectify his failure as a leader and as a human being. What he didn't imagine was that that night represented only the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond a simple correction of injustice. It was the first chapter of a story that would profoundly transform the lives of everyone involved, especially his own. The next morning, Raphael arrived early at the London courtyard, this time without his disguise. He greeted the cleaning crew who were finishing their shift and discreetly settled at a table in the corner of the dining room, from where he could observe the staff arriving. He had spent a sleepless night, alternating between guilt for having allowed such a degrading situation to occur under his roof and a determination to fully understand Juliana's life before intervening. At precisely 10:30 a.m. she arrived. She wore a simple white blouse, impeccably clean, faded but tear-free jeans and visibly worn shoes, patched with glue on one side. She carried a tattered cloth bag and had her curly hair tied back in a simple bun. Her appearance was that of someone striving to maintain dignity, even in precariousness. "Good morning, Mr. Nelson. I didn't know you would be here today," Juliana greeted with an almost imperceptible bow, surprised to see the restaurant owner. "Good morning, Juliana. I decided to oversee the lunch preparations today," Raphael replied, noticing how she avoided prolonged eye contact and how her hands trembled slightly as she pinned her badge to the uniform she had just taken from the staff locker. During the following hours, Raphael remained a keen observer. He noticed how Juliana worked with silent efficiency, as if she wanted to go unnoticed. He saw how meticulous she was in setting the tables, polishing the same cutlery 2 or 3 times until it was impeccable. He also noticed how she discreetly saved some olives and snacks left over from the appetizer tables in a napkin, hiding them in her uniform pocket. At midday, when the restaurant opened for lunch, Raphael remained in the kitchen, now observing how Juliana interacted with customers. Her rehearsed, professional but distant smile contrasted with the constantly hungry gaze she cast at the dishes she served. At break time, the staff gathered in the small canteen at the back of the establishment. Raphael was surprised to find that meals were not provided free of charge. Employees could buy food at a discount, but still had to pay. He saw when Ronald, the grill chef, offered half of his sandwich to Juliana. "Not hungry today, Jules?" he asked, extending the food. "Thanks, Ronald, but I already ate at home before coming," she replied with a forced smile, drinking only a glass of water while her colleagues had their meal. The lie was obvious to Raphael, who had witnessed the reality the night before. Pride prevented Juliana from accepting charity or revealing her situation. That small moment confirmed what he already suspected. It was not an isolated case of hunger, but a chronic condition carefully hidden under the cloak of dignity. At the end of the shift, Raphael called Bianca, the manager, to his office. Without revealing what he had discovered about Juliana, he asked seemingly casual questions about the employee. "She's punctual, committed, never causes problems," Bianca reported. "Customers love her for her discretion. But I confess I'm a bit concerned. She never socializes, never accepts invitations for happy hours, never comments on her personal life. Some staff have already mentioned that she seems to be losing weight every week." "Where does she live?" Raphael asked. "As far as I know, she shares a room with 2 other people in a boarding house in the East End, quite far from here. She takes 2 buses and trains to get here. She always asks for overtime, but we rarely have authorization for that," Bianca explained, not realizing how each word intensified the weight of guilt on Raphael's shoulders. That evening, Raphael dismissed the team early, claiming a kitchen equipment inspection. He asked Bianca to ensure everyone left, but deliberately did not mention Juliana, whom he knew was finishing cleaning the dining room. He hid again in the pantry, waiting. As on the previous night, Juliana waited for everyone to leave. This time, in addition to checking the leftovers on the plates, she opened one of the refrigerators and examined the kitchen scraps, sauces, small portions of rice, beans, and vegetables that would be discarded. She began to eat with the same desperate eagerness, but now, under Raphael's watchful eye, he could notice details he hadn't before. The young woman's hands showed small, poorly healed cuts, probably from extra jobs she was doing. Her wrists were so thin they looked like they could break with any sudden movement, and her eyes, though clouded by exhaustion, still held a glimmer of determination. Unable to continue watching that scene of silent despair, Raphael emerged from his hiding place. The sound of his footsteps alerted Juliana, who turned abruptly, dropping the container of food she was holding. The terror in her eyes was indescribable, a mixture of shame, fear, and resignation. "Please, sir, please, Gita." She fell to her knees, frantically gathering the food scattered on the floor. "Don't fire me, I beg you. These are just leftovers that were going to be thrown away. I'll clean everything, no one will know, I promise." Her hands trembled so much that she could barely pick up the scattered grains of rice. Tears fell copiously, forming small puddles on the kitchen floor that she tried to wipe away with her own hands. Raphael felt a lump in his throat. He crouched beside her and gently took her trembling hands. "Juliana, stop. Please stop," he asked in a soft voice. "I'm not here to fire you. I'm here because I care." The young woman froze, unable to process those words. Her incredulous eyes finally met Raphael's, seeking confirmation that this wasn't an additional cruelty before the inevitable dismissal. "When was your last real meal? Not leftovers, not food from the bin, but a complete meal sitting at a table?" he asked. Juliana lowered her gaze, shame evident in her expression. I don't quite remember. Maybe 3-4 days ago," she murmured. "The lady who shares the room with me made a hearty soup and offered me some." Raphael helped her stand up and led her to one of the restaurant tables. He went to the kitchen and, in a few minutes, personally prepared a plate of rice, beans, grilled chicken fillet, and vegetables, a simple but complete and nutritious meal. He placed the plate before her, along with a glass of fresh juice and a piece of still warm bread. "Eat," he said gently. "Eat calmly without rushing. No one will take this from you." Juliana hesitated, looking from the plate to Raphael, suspicious that it might be a trap. "It's not fair for me to eat the restaurant's food without paying," she said, her voice almost inaudible. "Juliana, this food is mine and I am offering it to you. Please accept." Slowly, as if expecting him to change his mind at any moment, Juliana picked up the fork. The first mouthful was cautious, but as the flavor spread in her mouth, the long-contained hunger manifested itself. Still, she ate with decorum, cutting small pieces, chewing slowly, savoring each forkful as if it were the most precious of meals. Raphael sat opposite her in respectful silence. He didn't want to interrupt that moment, nor burden her with questions. There would be time for that. At that instant, the most important thing was to restore to her some of the dignity that life had stolen. As he watched Juliana eat, Raphael thought about all the changes he would implement in his restaurants, starting the next day. Beginning with the basics, none of his employees would go hungry again, nor would they need to hide to eat. That he could guarantee. After finishing her meal, Juliana kept her eyes fixed on the empty plate as if she didn't know what to do next. The silence between her and Raphael was not uncomfortable, but laden with suppressed emotions. He waited patiently, giving her space to process the moment. "Juliana," Raphael finally began, his gentle voice breaking the silence, "I'm not here to judge you or punish you. I want to understand your story if you're willing to share it." The waitress slowly raised her eyes. Distrust was still visible in her gaze, the result of a life where kindness rarely came without a hidden price. "There's not much to tell, sir," she replied, nervously adjusting the crumpled napkin beside the plate. "Stories like mine exist by the thousands in this city." "Even so, I'd like to hear yours," Raphael insisted, pouring her another glass of juice. Juliana took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Her hands still trembled slightly as she began to speak. "I was born in Brighton Beach in a fishing community. My mother, Mrs. Celia, was a school dinner lady at a local school. My father left us when I was 5. I grew up watching Mum work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to keep me in school," she recounted, her voice gaining firmness as the words flowed. "I was always a good student. I dreamed of going to university. When I finished high school, I got a place in nutrition at a university here in London, through a national university admissions program. It was supposed to be our big moment of joy, you know." Her voice faltered, and Raphael realized they were approaching the painful part of the story. "That's when Mum started feeling pain. At first we thought it was tiredness, stress. She had been working so hard to save a little money to help me in London." Juliana paused, swallowing hard. "When she finally went to the doctor, we discovered a severe kidney problem. The doctors said the treatment would be long, that she would need expensive medication and eventually a transplant." Raphael listened intently, beginning to understand the puzzle that formed the young woman's life before him. "I postponed university. I couldn't leave her alone at that time. I got a job in the Brighton Beach Tourist Centre as a guest house receptionist. The salary wasn't bad by the town's standards, but the medicines consumed almost everything. Even with the NHS covering part of the treatment, the costs were enormous." She paused, taking a sip of juice before continuing. "For 6 years I lived like that, working by day, taking care of her by night. The disease advanced slowly, consuming not only her body, but our savings, our dreams, even our small house, which we ended up having to sell to pay medical debts. 6 months ago," Juliana continued, now with a choked voice, "Mum finally rested. The doctors did their best, I did my best, but it wasn't enough." Raphael noticed how she avoided using the word death, a way of protecting herself from the finality of that event, which had transformed her life. "I was left alone, in debt and without direction. The guest house where I worked closed during the low season. That's when I thought of London again, no longer to study but to start over, to escape the memories, to try to survive. A distant cousin who lives in the East End offered me a mattress in the room she shared with 2 other people, until I could get settled." She made a vague gesture with her hands, indicating the restaurant around them. "I spent 2 months handing out CVs all over the city. Nothing. When I was about to give up and go back to Brighton Beach, one of the girls I shared the room with mentioned that she knew someone who worked here and that they might need a waitress. I interviewed with Mrs. Bianca, and to my surprise, I was hired. The problem," she continued, "is that life in London costs much more than I imagined. The rent for the shared room eats up almost all my salary. Transport to get to work is another fixed expense. And there are still the medical debts I left behind in Brighton Beach, installments I continue to pay because I don't want to tarnish my mother's name, even though she's no longer here." Raphael felt a pang in his chest as he fully understood the trap Juliana was in, working to survive, but not earning enough even to eat properly. "In the beginning," she continued, shame evident in her voice, "I could still afford to buy a packet of biscuits, some bread, something to get me through the day. But as the weeks passed, prices increased, some emergency would arise, and food became a luxury." She lowered her eyes, staring at her own hands, which were now clasped together on the table. "The first time I took leftovers here was a month ago. A customer left an almost full plate of risotto. It was going to the bin. It seemed so absurd to throw it away when I was so hungry. I took just a little, hid it in a napkin and ate it in the bathroom," she confessed. "After that, it became routine. I waited for everyone to leave, and Well, you saw what I do. Raphael felt a lump in his throat. This young woman before him was not a criminal. She was a survivor, fighting with the weapons she had against cruel circumstances. Why didn't you ask for help? To Bianca, to your colleagues, to me? He asked softly. Juliana raised her chin, a flicker of pride shining in her tired eyes. Asking for help is easy, sir. What's difficult is living with the burden of charity when you're trying to rebuild your own dignity. I didn't want to be the poor thing, the needy one. I just wanted to be Juliana, the competent waitress who does her job and moves forward. Raphael nodded, understanding. Pride, often the last refuge of the desperate, was something he himself knew well from the times he struggled to establish his first business. Juliana, he said finally, I came to the restaurant last night because I suspected someone was stealing supplies. I found you, and I realized I had failed not as an owner, but as a human being. I failed to create an environment where everyone could thrive, not just survive. He paused, carefully choosing his next words. What I saw was not a crime, it was a symptom of a larger problem, a problem I intend to correct immediately. Juliana's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and apprehension. You're not going to fire me, she asked, her voice almost inaudible. Raphael smiled for the first time that night. Fire you, on the contrary. I want to offer you a full-time contract. Starting tomorrow, you will work 44 hours a week, with a 50% salary increase retroactive to the 3 months you've already worked here. Juliana blinked, incredulous, as if the words didn't make sense to her ears. Furthermore, Raphael continued, I want to offer you a personal loan interest-free to pay off your medical debts. You can repay me when you can, without pressure, without rigid deadlines. But why? She asked, confused. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. Raphael stood up and walked to the window overlooking the street, where London's nightlife pulsed, indifferent to individual dramas. When I was 19, Juliana, I lived in a situation not so different from yours. My family lost everything in a fire in the Scottish Highlands. We came to London in search of opportunities, and I ended up alone, trying to survive. I know what it's like to go to bed hungry, to count coins for transport, to work to exhaustion for a pittance. He turned to face her. The difference is that in my most desperate moment, I found someone who believed in me, a chef who gave me not just a job, but a chance to learn, to grow, to dream again. I am merely paying forward what I received. Raphael sat back down opposite her. But it's not just because of that, Juliana. It's also because you deserve it. I've seen how you work, how dedicated you are, how you maintain your dignity even in the most adverse circumstances. People like that are rare and valuable, and I would be a fool to let you slip away. The tears Juliana tried to hold back finally escaped. They were no longer tears of despair or shame, but of relief, a relief so intense it felt painful. I don't know if I can accept all this, she murmured, wiping her face with the back of her hands. You can and you should, Raphael replied firmly. It's not charity, it's justice, and more than that, it's an investment. In you, in your potential, in your future. He extended his hand across the table. So, do we have a deal? After a moment of hesitation, Juliana shook Raphael's extended hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm for someone so physically fragile, a demonstration of the inner strength that sustained her. Thank you, she said simply, unable to articulate the whirlwind of emotions flooding her. Don't thank me yet, Raphael smiled. Save it for when I show you all the changes we'll be making around here. And believe me, Juliana, this is just the beginning. What neither of them could imagine at that moment was how true that simple phrase would prove to be, and how their lives would intertwine in ways that would far transcend the employer-employee relationship. The next morning, Raphael arrived at the restaurant even before the cleaning crew. Sitting in his office, he was finalizing a document that would fundamentally change the culture of his establishments. At 8:30 a.m., when Bianca arrived, he was already waiting for her with a strong coffee and a determined expression. I need you to call a general meeting for today at 10 a.m. before lunch service begins. All staff from all 3 restaurants. No exceptions, he instructed. Is there a problem, Raphael? Bianca asked, concerned by her boss's unusual seriousness. "On the contrary," he replied, handing her a copy of the document he had just finished. "We are about to solve several problems." As Bianca read the document, her eyes widened. "This is revolutionary," she murmured. "Are you sure? The financial impact will be..." "Significant, yes," Raphael completed, "but necessary, and I can assure you it will be an investment, not an expense." At precisely 10 a.m., the main dining room of the London Courtyard was full. Employees from all three restaurants, about 40 people in total, waited anxiously, speculating about the reason for the extraordinary meeting. Juliana remained in a corner, partially hidden behind other colleagues, still embarrassed by the events of the previous night. Raphael stepped onto the small improvised stage where musicians usually played on weekends. He was formally dressed, not with the usual elegance of a restaurant owner, but in the same shirt he wore when working in the kitchen, a symbolic gesture that did not go unnoticed by the older staff. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "Thank you for coming, especially those who weren't scheduled for today and had to travel specifically for this meeting." He paused, looking at each face present, lingering briefly on Juliana. "Last night I had a revelation, say a painful revelation that made me realize that, despite all our commercial success, I had failed as a leader and as a human being," he declared, causing surprised murmurs among those present. "I discovered that, while we celebrate positive culinary reviews and rejoice over tables booked weeks in advance, a member of our team was starving. Real desperate hunger, hidden behind polite smiles and impeccable uniforms." Glances began to circulate around the room, some landing on Juliana, whose expression was a mixture of shame and alarm. Raphael, noticing her discomfort, quickly continued. "I will not name this person, because the important thing is not who went through this, but the fact that we allowed it to happen. I allowed it to happen by creating an environment where someone preferred to eat leftovers in hiding rather than ask for help." The silence was absolute now. Some employees looked at the floor embarrassed. Others stared at Raphael with expressions ranging from surprise to guilt. "Starting today, we are implementing fundamental changes in our company," he announced, raising the document he had prepared. "First, all part-time contracts will be converted to full-time for those who wish. Second, there will be a general salary increase of 30% for all positions to be implemented in the next pay cycle." A murmur of astonishment swept through the room. Raphael raised his hand, asking for silence to continue. "Third, all meals during working hours will be free for all employees at any of our establishments at any time. Fourth, we are creating an emergency financial assistance fund, accessible to any employee experiencing hardship, without bureaucracy, without judgment, without excessive questions." He took a deep breath before continuing. "Finally, starting today, we will have monthly anonymous feedback sessions so you can express needs and suggestions without fear of retaliation. Because a business does not prosper by exploiting people, it grows by uplifting them." The silence was broken by hesitant applause that quickly turned into an ovation. Some employees openly wept, others hugged each other. In the corner of the room, Ronald, the grill chef, put his arm around Juliana's shoulders in a protective gesture, as if apologizing for not having noticed her situation. "This is not charity," Raphael concluded when the applause subsided. "It's belated justice and a reminder that we are more than a team, we are a community, responsible for each other's well-being." After the meeting, while employees animatedly discussed the announced changes, Raphael discreetly called Juliana to his office. She entered timidly, still uncomfortable with the sudden, albeit indirect, attention. "I hope you didn't feel exposed," he said. "I tried to be as discreet as possible." "Thank you for that," she replied softly. "But are you sure you can afford all these changes? It seems so radical." Raphael smiled, pointing to a chair for her to sit. "Do you know how much we spend monthly on waste across the three restaurants? Almost 15% of our revenue. Do you know how much we lose in turnover from dissatisfied and underpaid employees? Approximately 20% more in training costs and loss of productivity," he explained. "What I announced today is not just ethical, It is economically intelligent in the long run. He opened a drawer and took out an envelope, handing it to Juliana. Here's an advance on your new salary and the retroactive payment I promised. I also included the amount to settle your medical debts. The formal contract will be prepared by HR later today. Juliana took the envelope with trembling hands, unable to articulate words of thanks. But I want to offer you something more, Raphael continued. Something money can't buy. She looked at him, intrigued. I've noticed you have untapped potential, Juliana. Your attention to detail, your silent efficiency, your ability to maintain composure even in the most adverse circumstances. These are rare and valuable qualities in restaurant management. Raphael leaned forward, his eyes shining with genuine enthusiasm. I'd like to be your mentor, to teach you the business from the ground up. And to start, I'm going to fund a technical course in culinary management for you. Juliana blinked several times, processing the proposal. Why me? She finally asked. With all due respect, sir, there are much more qualified employees with more experience. Because I see in you what I saw in myself years ago, unwavering determination in the face of adversity. And because people who have known real hunger know how to value food as both art and necessity, never losing sight of the humanity behind every dish served. For the first time since he had met her, Raphael saw a genuine smile light up Juliana's face. Not the rehearsed smile of the waitress, but that of a young woman glimpsing possibilities she had never considered within her reach. I accept, she replied simply. In the following weeks, the atmosphere in Raphael's restaurants visibly transformed. The staff, now well-fed and fairly compensated, worked with renewed enthusiasm. Service quality improved, waste decreased, and even customers noticed the difference in the atmosphere. Social media began to comment on the special vibe at the London Courtyard and its sister establishments. Juliana, in turn, blossomed visibly. With adequate nutrition and fewer financial worries, she gradually regained weight and color. 3 times a week, after her shift, she went straight to her technical course classes, often returning to the restaurant after 10 p.m. to observe the closing and ask questions of Raphael, who always waited for her. These evening sessions became a ritual for both of them, initially focused exclusively on technical aspects of the business, inventory control, pricing, team management. They gradually evolved into broader conversations about culinary philosophy, sustainability, and corporate social responsibility. On one of those nights, while reviewing the month's figures, Raphael noticed that, despite the significant increase in staff expenses, profitability had not fallen. On the contrary, increased productivity and reduced waste had offset the additional costs. See? He commented to Juliana, who was analyzing the reports beside him. Ethics and profit are not mutually exclusive. She smiled, highlighting a specific number in the report. And look at this. Online reviews increased from 4.2 to 4.8 in just 1 month. Customers notice when employees are genuinely happy. It was at this moment that Raphael noticed something different in his own behavior. He had begun to eagerly anticipate these evening sessions, to value Juliana's insightful observations, to admire her ability to learn quickly and apply knowledge. What had started as professional mentorship was subtly evolving into something more. Juliana also seemed more at ease in his presence. Her initial shyness gave way to growing confidence. She now respectfully challenged him when she disagreed with a managerial decision, offered innovative suggestions, and occasionally shared stories from her childhood in Brighton Beach, happy moments before her mother's illness, sunset fishing trips, community seaside festivals. On a particularly productive night, after finalizing the menu planning for the following month, Raphael found himself reluctant to end the meeting. It was almost midnight. The restaurant was empty except for the two of them, and the city outside seemed distant, as if only they existed in the universe of that silent kitchen. It's getting late, Juliana commented, gathering her notes. I should go. Tomorrow we have that group of business executives for the power lunch. I can call a driver to take you, Raphael offered, aware of the long bus journey she would normally face at that hour. It's not necessary, she smiled. I forgot to tell you. With the new salary, I managed to rent a room just for myself nearby in Kensington. I can walk. Raphael felt an inexplicable wave of satisfaction, knowing that she was now closer, not just geographically, but in terms of quality of life. "I'm happy to hear that," he said sincerely. "Very happy." Their gazes met for a moment longer than usual. There was something unsaid hanging between them, something neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Raphael broke eye contact first, aware of the complexity of the situation. He was her mentor, her employer, someone in a position of power over her. "Good night, Juliana," he said formally, trying to re-establish the professionalism that seemed to be dissolving. "Good night, Raphael," she replied, using his first name for the first time, a small act of equality that did not go unnoticed by either of them. As he watched Juliana leave through the back door, Raphael recognized the feeling he was trying to deny himself. He was falling in love, and that complicated everything. 3 months had passed since the implementation of the changes in Raphael's restaurants. The London Courtyard had become a success story among culinary entrepreneurs, frequently cited in reports on business ethics and sustainability. The waiting list for reservations grew, and Raphael was beginning to consider opening a 4th establishment. Juliana, in turn, had transformed. The malnourished and frightened young woman gave way to a confident and vibrant woman. Her body had regained a healthy weight. Her hair shone, and her eyes, once constantly downcast and evasive, now faced the world with determination. In the technical course, she stood out as the best student in her class, frequently being invited by professors to share her practical experiences at the London Courtyard. On a Sunday morning, a day when the restaurant opened only for brunch, Raphael arrived early and found Juliana in the kitchen, experimenting with a recipe that wasn't part of the menu. "Good morning," he greeted, surprised. "I didn't know you'd be in today." Juliana turned, slightly startled, a smudge of flour on her face accentuating her jovial air. "I wanted to test an idea," she explained, gesturing to the counter where a golden pastry rested. "It's a reinterpretation of the shrimp pie my mother used to make in Brighton Beach, but with a touch of tucupi and jambu that I learned in Amazonian cuisine classes." Raphael approached, curious. The aroma emanating from the oven was irresistible, a complex combination of seafood, fresh herbs, and a spicy kick. "May I?" he asked, pointing to a small portion of the pie already cut on a plate. "Please do," Juliana replied, watching carefully as he tasted it. The first mouthful caused an explosion of flavors in Raphael's mouth, the natural sweetness of the prawns perfectly balanced with the acidity of the tucupi, the crispy texture of the pastry contrasting with the creamy filling, and that characteristic tingling sensation of the jambu that transformed each bite into a complete sensory experience. "This is..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Extraordinary. Simply extraordinary." Juliana's face lit up with the praise. "Really? Is the tucupi not too strong? I was afraid it would be too regional, too specific for the London palate." "It is regional and specific, yes, but that's precisely what makes it special," Raphael replied. "It's authentic, it has personality, it tells a story, your story. The fusion between the Kent coast and the Amazon creates something unique." They looked at each other for a moment, an unverbalized energy flowing between them. Raphael felt his heart quicken and looked away first. "We should include it on next month's menu," he suggested, trying to return to the safe ground of professional conversation. "Do you really think it's ready for that?" she asked, surprising him with her insecurity. Despite all her recent development, Juliana still occasionally doubted her own talent. "More than ready," Raphael affirmed. "In fact, I'd like to propose something more ambitious." She tilted her head, intrigued. "Next month, we'll mark 1 year since your hiring. How about we celebrate with a special tasting menu developed entirely by you? A deep Britain-themed evening, exploring lesser-known regional flavors just as you've done with this pie." Juliana's eyes widened at the proposal. "An entire menu, developed by me. But I'm just an apprentice, I don't have full training yet, and..." "You have talent and creativity, which are more valuable than diplomas," Raphael gently interrupted. "Besides, I'll be by your side to guide you as needed." After a moment of hesitation, Juliana nodded. "All right, I accept the challenge." In the following weeks, they worked side by side on creating the special menu. They spent hours in the kitchen, experimenting with combinations, discussing techniques, adjusting seasonings. They often lost track of time, working long after the restaurant closed, immersed in the creative process that brought them closer and closer. It was during one of these evening sessions that something unexpected happened. Working on a cupuaçu-based dessert, Juliana became frustrated when the sauce didn't reach the desired consistency. In an impulsive gesture, she dipped her finger into the still warm mixture. "Ouch!" she exclaimed, instinctively putting her finger to her mouth. Raphael, without thinking, took her hand and led it to the tap, letting cold water run over the small burn. "Careful," he murmured, holding her hand between his, a touch that lasted longer than necessary. These small burns seem harmless, but they accumulate over time. Their hands remained joined under the running water, their bodies close enough that they could feel each other's warmth. When he finally turned off the tap, Raphael did not release Juliana's hand. Instead, his eyes met hers, silently conveying something that words could not express. "I think it's better now," Juliana whispered, but made no move to pull away. The moment seemed suspended in time. The silent kitchen, the city asleep outside, just the two of them in a private universe of unexplored possibilities. Raphael leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wished. But Juliana remained still, her eyes revealing a mixture of expectation and apprehension. When their lips finally met, the kiss was gentle, hesitant, laden with unasked questions. As they drew apart, reality seemed to crash down on them. Raphael took a step back, his expression conflicted. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That was inappropriate. I'm your employer, your mentor. This shouldn't have—" "No," Juliana interrupted with surprising firmness. "Don't you dare reduce what just happened to a matter of professional hierarchy." She took a deep breath before continuing. "For weeks, maybe months, something has been growing between us. Something beyond mentorship, beyond work. It would be dishonest to deny it." Raphael ran a hand through his hair, visibly disturbed. "Precisely why I'm concerned, Juliana. I don't want you to think that everything I did, the contract, the raise, the course, was to lead to this moment. Do you think I haven't thought about that?" she asked. "Do you think I haven't agonized over the same doubt? Questioning whether what I feel is just gratitude or whether what you feel is just compassion." She took a step forward, regaining proximity. "But then I realized that devaluing what we feel because of our past is as unfair as it would be to ignore our present because of our professional positions." Juliana gently touched Raphael's face. "I am grateful to you, yes. That will never change. But what I feel now is different. It's something that grew naturally as I got to know the man behind the employer, his character, his worldview, his empathetic leadership style." Raphael closed his eyes briefly, absorbing her words. "I'm scared," he confessed, with a rare vulnerability. "Scared that this might harm you in some way. Scared of staff comments. Scared that it might look like I'm using my position. And I'm scared that we'll let something true pass us by because of hypothetical fears," Juliana countered. "If there's one thing I've learned from everything I've lived through, it's that life is too short to postpone happiness." Raphael gazed at her for a long time, admiring the strength she now displayed, so different from the fragile young woman he had found eating scraps months ago. It was as if their roles had reversed, and now she was the mentor, teaching him about courage. "What do you suggest, then?" he finally asked. "I suggest we be honest, with ourselves first and then with others. That we don't rush but also don't retreat out of fear. That we give this, whatever this is, a chance to develop naturally without pressure." Raphael nodded slowly. "You're right," he conceded. "But we need to establish some clear boundaries. In the restaurant during working hours, we maintain a strictly professional relationship. And at some point, we'll need to be transparent with the team to avoid the appearance of favoritism." "I completely agree," Juliana smiled. "After all, we built a culture of transparency here, didn't we? It would be hypocritical not to apply it to ourselves." He returned the smile, feeling a weight being lifted from his shoulders. For a moment, they just stood there contemplating the new path opening before them. "So," Raphael began after a moment of comfortable silence, "we still have a dessert to finish, don't we?" "We do," Juliana laughed, turning back to the counter. "And this time I promise not to burn any fingers." They resumed work, moving through the kitchen with a new awareness of each other's presence. The rest of the night was dedicated to cooking, but something fundamental had changed. Each shared glance, each accidental touch as they reached for the same utensils, now carried an additional meaning, the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine months ago. When they finally finished, it was past 1 in the morning. Raphael insisted on walking Juliana home, and they walked side by side through the empty streets of Notting Hill. The winter night was unusually mild for London, as if the city itself conspired to make that moment more special. At the door of the small building where Juliana now lived, they said goodbye with a restrained kiss, but one laden with promises. They didn't know exactly what would come next, but for the first time in a long time, both felt that the future, regardless of its challenges, would be faced together. "See you tomorrow," Raphael murmured. "See you tomorrow," Juliana replied, her smile illuminating the night. The months that followed were filled with intense transformations, both professionally and personally. The special Deep Britain menu, conceived by Juliana, became a culinary phenomenon in London. Specialized critics praised the authenticity and innovation of the recipes, highlighting how the dishes managed to be simultaneously sophisticated and accessible, telling stories of different British regions through flavors. What began as a themed evening transformed into a fixed menu, with seasonal rotation based on the availability of regional ingredients. Juliana, now formally promoted to sous chef of the London Courtyard, gained increasing recognition in the gastronomic scene. Her face had appeared in specialized magazines, and she had been invited to participate in culinary events as a speaker, sharing her vision on social gastronomy and sustainability. Raphael observed her blossoming with a mixture of pride and admiration. Their relationship, initially kept discreet, had been communicated to the team 6 months after that night in the kitchen. To their surprise, the news was met with knowing smiles and comments of "finally." Apparently, the chemistry between them had been obvious to everyone around, long before they themselves recognized it. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Raphael led Juliana blindfolded along Oxford Street. They had celebrated 1 year and 2 months of their relationship the night before, with an intimate dinner prepared by both of them at his home in Chelsea, where she was spending more and more time. "Where are we going?" Juliana asked for the 3rd time, laughing as Raphael carefully guided her along the busy pavement. "Patience, Chef Nash," he teased. "Some flavors need to be savored with surprise." After a few minutes of walking, they stopped. Juliana felt Raphael position himself behind her and gently remove the blindfold from her eyes. When her vision adjusted to the brightness, she found herself in front of a spacious commercial unit, with large display windows and a discreet sign that read, "Available for lease." "What is this?" she asked, confused. Raphael smiled, handing her a set of keys. "Our next chapter, if you accept. A new restaurant, different from anything we've done before." Juliana's eyes widened. "A new restaurant? But we've just renovated the London Courtyard, and the other 2 are doing so well." "This one would be different," Raphael explained, his voice vibrating with contained enthusiasm. "It would be your restaurant, Juliana. Your concept, your vision, your menu. I would just be the investor and the moral support." She looked from the facade to Raphael, incredulous. "My restaurant? But why?" "Because you're ready," he replied simply. "I see your talent, your creativity, your dedication. You haven't been my apprentice for a long time now. You're a talented chef with your own voice, and that voice deserves a space to express itself fully." Juliana took a step forward, touching the display window with her fingertips, as if trying to verify if it was real. "It's a perfect location," Raphael continued. "Close to tube stations, constant flow of people, enough space for an intimate yet comfortable concept." "I don't know what to say," Juliana murmured, visibly emotional. "It's a dream I never dared to have." "Well, it's time to dream bigger," Raphael smiled. "And there's one more thing I want to show you." He took the keys from her hands and opened the property's door. Inside, the space was empty, except for a table and 2 chairs in the center, where there was a document folder. Raphael led Juliana over and opened the folder. "What is this?" she asked, examining the papers. "The preliminary floor plan. See this area here at the back?" He pointed to a significant space in the drawing. "It would be a social dining room." a space where people in vulnerable situations could receive nutritious meals with dignity, without charges or judgments. Juliana covered her mouth with her hands, tears forming in her eyes. "Like the place where you found me eating leftovers," she whispered. "Exactly," Raphael confirmed, his voice soft, but transformed into something that honors that pain, that converts it into purpose. Every night after the restaurant closes, we would open this space to those in need. No waste, no leftovers. Meals prepared specifically for them with the same care dedicated to paying customers. Juliana couldn't hold back her tears now. "It's perfect," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "It's exactly what I would choose to do if I could." "And you can," Raphael smiled. "That's the point." "You can." She threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. "Thank you for believing in me." Raphael held her firmly, but then pulled back slightly, his expression becoming more serious. "There's one more thing I want to discuss with you," he said, surprising her by kneeling on the floor of the empty space. Juliana's heart quickened when she saw Raphael take a small box from his pocket. "Juliana Nash," he began, his voice slightly trembling. "When I found you that night in the kitchen, something in me changed forever. I saw in your struggle for survival the same determination that has driven me throughout my life, but also a compassion and integrity that inspired me to be better as a businessman and as a human being." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring with a small pearl. Simple, elegant, without ostentation. "In recent months, with you, I've discovered a taste of happiness I'd never experienced before. And as a good chef, when we find a perfect recipe, we want to repeat it for life." Juliana smiled through tears, her entire body trembling slightly with the intensity of the moment. "Juliana, would you do me the honor of marrying me? Of building together not just restaurants, but a life based on the values we share. Of creating a new family recipe that nourishes not only our bodies, but our souls." For a brief moment, Juliana mentally relived her entire journey. The hungry girl from Brighton Beach who came to the capital, the desperate young woman secretly eating leftovers, the determined apprentice absorbing knowledge, the emerging chef finding her voice, and now the beloved woman ready for a new beginning. "Yes," she replied, her voice firm despite the tears. "Yes, Raphael, I accept." He slid the ring onto her finger and stood up, enveloping her in an embrace that seemed to contain all the promises of the world. As they kissed, it was as if their entire journey, with its pains, discoveries, and joys, converged into that single perfect moment. 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony held in the garden of the London courtyard, Juliana and Raphael exchanged vows before friends, family, and the entire restaurant staff. She wore a simple but elegant dress, with small pearls reminiscent of her engagement ring. He had opted for a light-colored suit, breaking from the tradition of formal black, representing the new beginning they were celebrating. At the end of the ceremony, everyone was invited to an exceptional banquet, with dishes that told the couple's story, from typical Kent coast cuisine, honoring Juliana's origins, to contemporary creations that symbolized their shared future. At one point during the celebration, when the guests were already satisfied and relaxed, Raphael asked for everyone's attention. Hand in hand with Juliana, he officially announced the opening of the New Start, the new restaurant they would inaugurate the following month, with its integrated social dining room. "This is not just a new commercial venture," he explained. "It's our way of honoring the journey that brought us here, and of reaching out to those who are still struggling to find their way." Juliana added, "At the New Start, every customer who enjoys a meal will indirectly be providing a dignified meal for someone in a vulnerable situation, not as charity but as a cycle of shared abundance." The idea was met with enthusiastic applause. Among the guests, several chefs and restaurant owners from the city approached afterwards to learn more about the model, interested in replicating it in their own establishments. "You might have started a movement," commented Bianca, the former manager who now ran the London courtyard, allowing Raphael to dedicate himself to the new projects. "We started it," Juliana corrected, looking fondly at her now husband. "And it's just the beginning." On the morning of the New Start's inauguration, Juliana woke before dawn. Lying beside Raphael, who was still asleep, she contemplated how life could change so drastically in such a short time. 2 years ago, she was hungry, desperate, without hope. Today, she was a respected chef, a rising entrepreneur, and a beloved woman. Carefully, so as not to wake her husband, she got up and went to the kitchen of the apartment they now shared. With precise and silent movements, she prepared a special breakfast. Homemade bread, perfectly cooked eggs, seasonal fruits, and the strong coffee Raphael loved. It was a small ritual they had established for important occasions, feeding each other as an expression of love and care. When Raphael finally woke and found the table set, his face lit up with a smile. "To celebrate our big day," Juliana explained, serving him a cup of coffee. "You're incredible," he said, pulling her in for a kiss, "ready to open the doors of the new start." "More than ready," she replied with confidence. That night, the restaurant had its official inauguration, with a full house and important critics present. The menu, carefully crafted by Juliana, told stories of resilience through British cuisine, dishes that transformed simple ingredients into memorable experiences, just as she herself had transformed. But the most moving moment of the night, for the couple, came after the official closing. As planned, at 11 p.m., the back doors of the restaurant opened to welcome the first group of people experiencing homelessness and social vulnerability. Raphael and Juliana, still in their chef uniforms, personally served each of the guests. They weren't leftovers, they weren't scraps. They were dishes prepared especially for that occasion, served on beautiful crockery, with cloth napkins and full cutlery. Dignity at the table. Seeing a young mother with her small child savoring a complete meal, Juliana felt tears in her eyes. Raphael, noticing her emotion, approached and put his arm around her waist. "This is just the beginning," he whispered in her ear. "Yes," Juliana agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "The beginning of many new starts." As they watched the dining room fill, with people who for so long had been invisible, now being treated with respect and attention, both knew they had found not only each other, but also a greater purpose that united them. From hunger to love, from hopelessness to solidarity, from survival to shared abundance, Juliana and Raphael had transformed a story of pain into a life's mission, proving that at times, it is in the deepest adversities that we find the ingredients for the perfect recipe for happiness. Dear listeners, we hope Raphael and Juliana's story has touched your hearts. If you enjoyed this story of overcoming adversity and love, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life in its various facets. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your comments and knowing which part of this story moved you the most.